Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone.
A 66-year-old Georgia man is reportedly lucky to be alive this week after he was the victim of a brutal attack inside his own home, a crime carried out by two unknown perpetrators disguised as delivery workers. The whole thing happened on the morning of January 11th and was partially captured by a home security camera. In the footage, the two unknown suspects can be seen walking up to the victim's address on the 500 block of Price Street around 8 a.m. The men were dressed in blue hooded jackets, complete with the Amazon logo, and were pretending to deliver a package that one of them is carrying. However, as soon as the homeowner, 66-year-old George Dirk Hardison, opened up the front door, things took a horrifying turn. After forcing their way inside, the two suspects demanded money. They also began beating Dirk with what has been described as a sledgehammer-like weapon. The vicious attack lasted nearly 8 minutes, and while the actual assault happened out of view of the camera, Dirk can be heard screaming throughout the chilling footage. When the suspects finally fled the scene, they reportedly made off with just $80 in cash. Dirk, meanwhile, was hospitalized after neighbors came to his aid after hearing his cries for help. Doctors say he needed 14 staples in his head to properly close his wounds. At the time of this recording, the suspects remain unidentified, though police have described them as two black males believed to be in their 20s with medium brown complexion. They say that once arrested, the men will be charged with a minimum of aggravated assault, aggravated battery, and home invasion. Right now, authorities are asking any members of the public who might have any information about the case to please come forward.
Representatives from the NYPD say that a local woman is facing murder charges this week after she was accused of brutally attacking and killing the superintendent of her apartment complex when he tried to collect thousands of dollars in unpaid rent. The whole thing started on January 14th when family members of Jose Portillo started to worry after they couldn't get in contact with him. The 55-year-old building superintendent had gone to do some of his usual tasks around the apartment complex where he lived and worked in Queens' Kew Gardens Hills neighborhood. However, no one had heard from him for several hours. After getting in contact with employees at the complex's management company, Jose's brother was able to review surveillance footage. Video showed Jose entering part of the building at 8:45 that morning, but there was no footage of him leaving. Police were contacted shortly after. By the time officers arrived, it had been discovered that Jose had been planning to collect back rent that day from a pair of particularly problematic tenants. The couple that lived there owed between $24,000 and $26,000 in unpaid rent and were due to be evicted in just 2 days' time. When police knocked at the door of the unit in question, they were greeted by one of the residents, 48-year-old Sandra Coto Navarro. She told officers that she had paid Jose some money that morning and that he had gone on his way. However, authorities knew that this was a lie. A short time later, when Navarro's boyfriend arrived home from work, he agreed to show them the awful truth. Officers were directed inside, where they found Jose's body hidden underneath a bed. It had been covered with clothes and plastic garbage bags. He reportedly died from blunt force trauma to the head. It's now alleged that Navarro beat Jose to death with some sort of metal pipe when he came to collect the rent. Other wounds to his body suggested that she had attempted to cut him into pieces after his death, though had been unsuccessful. Bleach and other cleaning supplies were then allegedly used to try and cover up the crime. While in custody, Navarro appears to have further implicated herself in the killing. During a conversation with her boyfriend in Spanish, he reportedly asked her where the murder weapon was, to which she replied, quote, "Don't worry, my fingerprints won't be on it." The news of Jose's death devastated not only his loved ones, but many residents at the Kew Gardens Hills apartment complex where he lived and worked. Several say that he was a kind and helpful man that did a great job taking care of the building. One person remarked that Jose put so much effort into his work that they initially thought he owned the whole complex. Sandra Navarro has now been charged with murder, tampering with physical evidence, and criminal possession of a weapon. She currently remains in custody.
The surviving relatives of 3 victims who were killed last week say they were failed by the mental health system after a situation they claim could have been avoided if they were listened to, instead escalated into a deadly tragedy. The whole thing reportedly began on the afternoon of January 9th when Louisiana's St. Helena Parish Police were called to a residence in the town of Amite with reports of domestic disturbance. They arrived to find 31-year-old Ryant Jones, who was apparently in the middle of a mental health crisis. While Jones was quickly taken into custody, authorities encountered a horrifying scene inside the home. Everyone else there had been stabbed to death. The victims were soon identified as Jones' sister, 40-year-old Rhonda Powell, as well as his son, 1-year-old Hayden Madison, and Rhonda's 10-year-old son, Braylon. While all of this was awful enough on its own, following Jones's arrest for the crime, other family members spoke out claiming that it was entirely avoidable. They say Jones had a history of severe schizophrenia and that they sought treatment for him just the day before, but were ignored. According to the relatives, on January 8th, several of them took Jones to a hospital because he was acting aggressively and spoke about hearing voices in his head. When they got there, a doctor gave him a new medication, a pill, rather than the injection that he normally got and which was usually effective. The family objected to this, but the doctor apparently insisted on the new medication. Because of this, they pleaded with the hospital to admit Jones, citing their concerns about his aggression and stating that he needed to be under professional supervision. Instead, Jones was apparently sent home. The 31-year-old's cousin, DeAndre Robertson Warner, told the media this week in part, quote, "No one in that home survived because the mental health system failed him. Had he been committed, he would be where he needed to be today, and my other family members would be alive. Those babies would be alive. My cousin would be alive today, and my aunt wouldn't be trying to have the strength to bury 3 members of her family and wonder what will happen to the other one." At the time of this recording, Ryan Jones remains in custody, and authorities say they have charged him with 3 counts of first-degree murder.
If you're a regular viewer of our Crimes of the Week series, then you might remember that a couple of weeks back we brought you a disturbing and mysterious story out of Cape May County, New Jersey. It was here, near the end of last month, that state police launched an investigation after the remains of an unknown woman were found under extremely unsettling circumstances. The whole thing started on December 22nd, 2024, when authorities were alerted about the grisly discovery by a 46-year-old man named John Tyrell. Tyrell directed police to an area of the Belle Plaine State Forest, where they were shown a refrigerator that had been dumped in the middle of the woods. The fridge was wrapped in a sleeping bag, carpet, and secured with blue ratchet straps. Inside of the appliance was the body of a woman. At the time of our last report, police were asking for the public's help identifying the woman. They had released several images of distinctive tattoos on her back to aid with the identification, as well as photos of a couple of items that were found in the vicinity. However, little else was known about the case. That changed last week, when New Jersey State Police released a major update. They announced that not only had they successfully found the woman's name, they had made an arrest in the case. Well, another arrest technically, but we'll get to that in a second. State police have now revealed that the woman in question is 50-year-old Laura Hughes. The man arrested in connection with the case is her boyfriend, 45-year-old Christopher Blevins. According to investigators, Blevins was linked to the case after it was discovered that he had made some startling admissions to authorities in Mexico this past summer. He crossed over the border from Brownsville, Texas on August 2nd, turning himself into police near the end of the month. When he did, he claimed he'd fled the US in a panic because he'd been in a violent incident in New Jersey where he thought he might have killed someone during a bar fight. After learning that Blevins was driving a green Dodge Ram pickup truck when he crossed into Mexico, state police were able to recover surveillance footage of him driving the same vehicle in New Jersey. Specifically, images taken on July 24th, which show him heading into the Belle Plaine State Forest with a, quote, refrigerator-shaped object. When police conducted a search of the home that Blevins shared with Laura Hughes, they reportedly found more evidence solidifying this timeline and connecting Blevins to Laura's death. Blue ratchet straps matching the ones found at the crime scene were recovered from the residence, and the days on a calendar in the home were marked off with an X right up until July 24th. While Blevins is now facing a number of charges connected to the case, including desecrating human remains and hindering apprehension, so far he has not been charged with Laura's murder. In fact, police still haven't commented on how she died. What they have said, though, is that Laura and Blevins' relationship had a, quote, history of domestic violence, drug, and alcohol abuse. As I hinted at before, Blevins was not the first person to be arrested in the case. If you'll recall, we told you last time that the man who first contacted police, John Tyrell, was also arrested and charged with obstruction offenses after he refused to be fingerprinted and give police access to his cell phone. Unfortunately, it's not clear if authorities still think Tyrell might have something to do with Laura's death. One of the most tragic updates to be released so far is that Laura leaves behind 2 daughters, ages 13 and 18. A GoFundMe set up for Laura states in part, quote, "This unimaginable loss has left the daughters facing a difficult journey filled with grief and a whole lot of uncertainty. We are raising funds to assist with the cremation expenses and to plant a tree in her memory, providing a lasting tribute to her love. Any remaining funds will be directed towards supporting the girls' education and school needs, ensuring that they have the resources they need during this challenging time." At the time of this recording, the investigation continues.
Representatives from Florida's Polk County Sheriff's Office are asking for the public's help in identifying a pair of suspects this week following an equally strange and stomach-churning case of retail theft that took place in the middle of last month. According to a post released by the sheriff's office on social media, the whole thing began around noon on December 18th when the male and female suspect walked into a Family Dollar store in the city of Mulberry. Once inside, they quickly began filling up a cart full of items. However, they weren't intending on buying anything. Instead, the female suspect walked to an area of the store where she would be seen by customers and employees. That's when she proceeded to make quite the spectacle of herself. There's no point sugarcoating what happened next, so I'm just going to say it. She shit on the floor. As disgusting as this was, the whole thing was intended to be a distraction, and it was definitely effective. While all eyes were on the female suspect, her male accomplice walked right out of the store with the cart containing $500 worth of stolen goods. Ironically, police say many of the items the couple stole were cleaning supplies. In their post this week, police asked anyone who might have information about the two suspects to please come forward. As their identities are currently unknown, the Polk County Sheriff's Office opted to give them colorful nicknames instead, writing, quote, "If you recognize Mr. Clean or Miss Dookie, or you have information regarding this investigation, please contact Detective Hannon at 863-499-2400 or rhannon@polksheriff.org.
Representatives from Washington's Pierce County Sheriff's Department released an update in a deeply unsettling investigation this week, revealing the names and causes of death of 4 people that were recently found dead inside of a local residence. The whole thing began sometime on New Year's Eve, when police received a call from a man who said he made an awful discovery inside of his parents' house. After failing to hear from his 68-year-old father, William Vossler, and his 66-year-old mother, Eileen Vossler, for some time, he said he had traveled there to check on them and had forced his way in through a second-story window. He hadn't made it very far inside before he found what he believed was a woman's body inside of an upstairs bedroom. When the man gave authorities the location, which was in South Hill, not far from Puyallup, police realized that they recognized the address. In fact, they had been called there at least twice in the past week or so to conduct welfare checks on the family that lived there. However, they had been limited in what they could do during those visits. Because there was no sign of forced entry and no indication that a crime had taken place, they had been unable to enter. Upon arriving on December 31st, though, officers walked into a nightmarish situation. They quickly located the woman's body they had been called about in the bedroom, as well as a man's body in a master bathroom. These were not the homeowners, however. Instead, the deceased people were identified as another of William and Eileen's sons, 33-year-old Shane Vossler, and his 34-year-old girlfriend, Sue Bin Lee. According to reports, the home smelled strongly of decomposition. It was also extremely messy, though as investigators made their way through the residence, they finally found William and Eileen. Tragically, they were also dead, and their bodies had been stuffed into a freezer in the garage. Police now say that William and Eileen both died of multiple stab wounds, and that William had also suffered blunt force trauma. As for Shane and Sue, they died of gunshot wounds to the head. Authorities stated that Shane's wound was self-inflicted, but they have so far been unable to come to a determination about Sue. Additional clues at the scene helped to piece together some of what had happened. Notes found on a refrigerator suggested that William and Eileen were murdered approximately 6 months before they were discovered, with the notes listing their alleged times of death just hours apart on July 24th, 2024. As for Shane and Sue, it's believed that they continued to live in the house with the bodies for months afterwards. It's unclear exactly when they died, though police have said that it appears Sue died first. A social media post written by the 34-year-old in November, which also reportedly prompted one of the welfare checks, suggested that she was thinking about taking her own life. Unfortunately, the exact circumstances that led up to the horrific series of events may never be known, though Pierce County Police say that they are still investigating.
Authorities in the city of Lebanon, Pennsylvania say that a local mother is facing multiple charges this week after she was accused of using abusive methods to discipline her adolescent son, something she claims she did because she had a hard time controlling her children. The incident began shortly before 10 p.m. on January 11th when police received an extremely unsettling 911 call about a child being restrained at a home on East Kircher Avenue. They arrived to find an 11-year-old boy who was handcuffed to the top railing of a bunk bed. Things quickly got more disturbing when officers questioned the child and began learning that this was nothing out of the ordinary. In fact, the 11-year-old claimed that he had spent most of that day handcuffed to an oil tank in the basement. According to the boy, his mother, 33-year-old Chastity Candelario, had woken him up that morning before 5 a.m. and taken him down there. After restraining him, she'd gone to work, leaving him without access to food, water, or a bathroom for nearly 17 hours. At some point, the boy had been able to escape from the makeshift basement prison. However, he said he was worried what would happen to him and his siblings when his mom came home and saw that he was free. So he re-handcuffed himself to the bunk bed until one of the other children at the residence came and gave him a cell phone to call 911. When questioned about this, Candelario reportedly didn't deny it. She even apparently admitted this was not a one-time thing. She explained that she regularly locked the 11-year-old up for multiple hours at a time. She claimed she did this because she had a hard time controlling her children while she was away at work. What's even more upsetting is what the 11-year-old reportedly did to quote-unquote deserve this punishment in the first place. Officials say he was handcuffed in the basement on January 11th because Candelario was angry at him for eating too many hot dogs in the previous days. According to authorities, the 33-year-old had cameras set up around the house and claimed that the 11-year-old had violated house rules about how much he and her other kids were allowed to eat. Candelario was arrested after all this came to light and is now facing charges including false imprisonment, unlawful restraint, and endangering the welfare of a child.
Representatives from North Carolina's Pitt County Sheriff's Office say that they are piecing together a chaotic and terrifying case after a local real estate agent allegedly went on a violent crime spree last week that left 3 people dead. The whole thing started at around 1:45 p.m. on January 10th when Pitt County police were alerted to a disturbing incident at a local gas station. 911 callers told them that a man in a Sprinter van had just left the station and that he had been shooting randomly from his vehicle. It wasn't until about half an hour later that authorities got their first real lead as to what was going on, and unfortunately they soon realized that the gas station shooting was not an isolated incident. At 2:17 p.m., police received a 911 call from a man at a nearby residence on Peace Ridge Court. The man explained that his parents, 80-year-old Anthony and 76-year-old Paula Gribble, had just been shot by their former real estate agent. The son stated that the 55-year-old killer's name was David Lever. He said that he was now holding Lever at gunpoint. When police arrived, they were able to successfully take Lever into custody. However, sadly, Paula and Anthony Gribble were pronounced dead at the scene. Their son explained that his mom had called him that afternoon in a panic, saying that Lever was in their house. He rushed over because he only lived a few doors down, but it was already too late. As tragic as all of this already was, it was about to get worse. Following Lever's arrest, he was linked to another killing, a 64-year-old man named Enrique Reyes. Reyes was a neighbor of Lever's on Forest Acres Drive, approximately 4 miles away from the other murder scene. Although Reyes wasn't found until later that afternoon, it's believed that he was the first victim and was shot by Lever in his driveway after returning from the grocery store around 1:20 p.m. Because of this, police have commended the actions of Paula and Anthony Gribble's son, stating that things could have turned out even worse had he not put an end to Lever's crime spree. Indeed, it appears he attempted to attack other people on Peace Ridge Court, as he is accused of trying to get into one residence and shooting into another. As for why all of this happened, right now that remains a mystery. The Gribbles used Lever as their real estate agent when they purchased their house in 2014, but other than that, they had no apparent connection to him. The only other thing we know comes from the Gribble's son, who reportedly told police that he was, quote, not of sound mind and has substance abuse issues. When authorities conducted a search of Lever's home, more than 50 guns were recovered. Additional weapons and ammunition were found in the 55-year-old's vehicle. Lever is now facing 3 counts of murder, but officials say more charges are expected to follow. The case is still under investigation. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.